Here we go. Focus. Speed. I am speed.
We will never sleep, cause sleep is for the weak. That we will never rest, till we're all fucking dead.
No, sir, man. I don't like that crap. I'm a rocker, dude, through and through. Here's my favorite bands. AC/DC, Van Halen, not Van Hagar, Skinner, Def Leppard.
All right, we're on in 5 minutes.
We're headlining. We shouldn't be going on until at least 11.
It's the prom. It's over at 11.
Hey guys, what the heck is going on? My name is Sam Cox and this is the IMG podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. So today we got to sit down with our friend Cory from the band Pecos and the Rooftops. You might have heard of that band. Cory is a really awesome guy, man. This is a really cool podcast. There's nothing more that I love than listening to somebody that is just absolutely passionate, borderline nerdy about their job. They say if you find a job and you work a job that you really love, you never really work a day in your life. And that is Mr. Cory Chenoweth from Pecos and the Rooftops. This is a really, really good podcast for a lot of different reasons. If you're on either side of the spectrum where you really love all the background stuff that goes on, especially at a live show, meaning production, lights, sound, guitar teching, engineering, running cables, all this stuff, this is really for you. And if you don't know anything about that, like you have no idea how any of that works, this is probably arguably even more for you because you could learn a lot in this. I learned a ton in this podcast. This whole entire thing was borderline a Q&A between me and him because I just had a ton of questions. If you listen to me in this podcast where we've talked about any sort of lights or production, you know that I'm not a master at it at all. I've learned a lot about production on the road over the last 10 years by default. You will, doing it long enough, you will by default learn things, but I didn't really get down in the trenches of it like I did in this podcast, and it was really cool. So he was really passionate about his job, and Pecos and the Rooftops are definitely really lucky to have him. This is a guy that just absolutely loves his line of work. So we get into his background, we get into a lot of Q&As, we get into show etiquette, which is a really important thing. So this was a really good podcast. Make sure you guys are following the IMG podcast on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you guys are listening to this. And without any further ado, Mr. Cory Chenoweth from Pecos and the Rooftops. I've been wanting to do this one for a little while too, because I think that we don't really cover enough production here on this one. And I feel like, I told Ashley in the last podcast, I told her I know about production because I have to, not because I want to, Don't ask me to run sound for anything, for any reason, for anyone, because I'm not good at it, but there's a lot of days where I get a 1/4 inch mixed up with the mic cable or, XLR or whatever. And it's and I don't know, this is not my strong suit. So I wanted to get you on here because I also kind of have production questions, and I know a lot of people that listen probably are more on the artist side or the management side or tour manager side, so I think we all could benefit from your knowledge. So go over the background. So where are you from, and how'd you get started in all this stuff?
Well, I'm originally from a small town in rural Indiana. The town is called Forest, Indiana, and it's about a town of maybe 100 people. Oh, wow. Just one stop sign. And, my dad always had guitars lying around the house, and, he used to play a lot of bluegrass stuff. And I would kind of, play on them, but not actually play. And one of my best buddies at the time, his name was Jeff Mills. His dad was teaching him how to play guitar, and obviously I wanted to learn. So, I played Smoke on the Water probably 1 million times on my dad's Fender acoustic. So my mom told me to shut up and learn another song. And, just growing from that, I wanted to be in a band, and with a couple of my friends, Jeff and another buddy of ours. And I asked my mom for a drum set, and she said, absolutely not. You can have a bass guitar. And I was like, okay. So when I was 15, I got a bass from my mom for Christmas, and just went completely downhill from there. I mean, I fell in love with the instrument. I still play today, just not as regularly or on stage anymore. But, I played bass, everything from, the jazz band in our local high school to, you know, a progressive metal band. Where I met one of my best friends. His name's Jared French. He's currently out on tour with Will Green right now, and you know,
what does he do for him?
He plays guitar for Will Green.
Okay,
so he
cool.
took Josh Serrato's spot when Josh went to Toe. He's one of the. I don't want to say one of. He is the most talented person I've ever met my entire life. The dude can rip on any instrument you give to him. But he and we moved to California in 2016. Tried to make a run of it out there, and you know, he went to Berkeley College, and he met a buddy who is from Tyler, Texas, and he told us that, like, you know, if you guys are really serious about doing, you know, music together, you guys got to move to Austin. Like, LA isn't the scene right now. Austin is. So a year after being in California, we moved to Austin, and we started playing in bands. And
also known as Los Angeles, Texas, for anybody that's, you know,
it's getting there. It's getting there for sure. But my background in production really started with, you know, wanting to be in a band here in Austin. And I got tired of, you know, it was like a 4-piece band or whatever, bass, 2 guitars, drums. And we were practicing in a garage, and I just got tired of coming out of that practice with my head hurting, my ears were ringing every single night. Like, we would practice. And I just started, you know, looking into how to like build an in-ear rig. And, you know, I just kind of started there, and then it went, you know, how do I start the in-ear rig? And then what do I need for all these components? And then how do I make this better and better and better? And eventually it led to, you know, friends asking me to help with their artists in-ear rig. And then, literally through Jared, I met Brandon Jones, who's the guitar player for Pecos and the Rooftops. And Brandon was like, "Hey, do you know how to run monitors?" And I was like, "Absolutely, I do." And that led to the job I have now. And it was really out of necessity of, like, I am tired of hearing drums, you know, beat up my ears every night, to now I have a career that I love. And it's been a wild ride for sure.
Yeah, that's cool. How long have you been with Pecos and the Rooftops?
April would have been 1 year officially, but you know, I started January 2021 or 2022, excuse me, with them.
Right. There's always the iceberg of somebody's career. I'm always interested in, you know, you see the top of it. He works at Pecos and the Rooftops, but there's just a whole list of stuff underneath the iceberg that got you to the position you're at now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you know, there was a local band I was playing in called the Barons. You know, we were like an alt country band, and you know, we were always interested in having these in-ear mixes, and that was another step in this direction of, like, I'm more interested in the production side of things than I am actually playing, because I would spend most of my time just dialing in mixes at rehearsals rather than, you know, wanting to get better at the song that I'm playing, you know.
Yeah.
And then the
awesome.
same thing grew. You know, I went to a Parker McCollum show at Stubbs in Austin, and the opener was this guy named William Beckman. And I was just floored by how great he sounded. You know, it was just him, a bass player, and a drummer up on stage. And that was in 2020. Was that 2019, maybe 2020, somewhere in there anyway. And then 2021, he posted on his Instagram that he needed a bass player. And I hit him up. I was like, "Hey, man, I play bass. You know, would love to talk about, you know, potentially going out on the road." And after that, he picked me up as his bass player, and I played bass for William Beckman for about 8 months. And again, that was still more of like, oh, he's got these resources to do like a bigger production. I am, instead of, you know, mixing on this little iPad, it's now, you know, an actual like M32 with faders and everything. And I was more intrigued on how to set up the stage than actually like performing on the stage. And, you know, it was a heart to heart with one of my buddies, well, with that same buddy, Jared, where he was like, "Dude, you don't look comfortable being up there." And then that's when I really like knew it to be true that I wasn't meant to be a performer. I was really meant to be the backstage, the tech guy, the front of house, the monitor guy, one of those positions. I just knew that at that point, like, it was a feeling in my gut that I had prior, but it wasn't until, I had this heart-to-heart with Jared where he was just like, dude, I think you'd be better off, being on the production side. And sure enough, he was right. I absolutely love being on the production side. Like, it's
cool. Yeah.
Cool to watch the guys be up there and perform and do their thing, but to know that, like, part of that wouldn't happen without what I provide to these guys is just as cool. At least in my experience. Yeah.
Not all heroes wear capes, man. Everybody behind the scene, behind the scenes of the show. It's crazy. When you go see a show, the amount of people that are behind the scenes are, I would say most of the time, more than the people that are actually on stage, as far as, and especially when you're talking about, behind the scenes with, management, agents and tour managers and that kind of stuff. But I mean, there's probably 2 or 3 times the amount of people on stage sometimes. But, when you're going to watch a show, light director out there sometimes, front of house or a monitor guy or a guitar tech, the bigger the band, the more the positions. But,
right.
Yeah, no, it's just, it always kind of blows my mind how many people it takes to, actually put on a show. Cause, we'll open for people sometimes and, there's 4 people in the band, but like a dozen people hop off the freaking bus. And I'm like,
oh yeah,
everybody does crazy, man. It always blows my mind. So,
and that's how it is with, with PRT, we've got 6 dudes in the band. And then there's our tour manager, Jackson, our merch manager, Wheezy. You got myself. We have Ryan Sneed at front of house, and then we have Jesse Santos at guitar tech. Like, there's a plethora of people up there, and 6 of us. I mean, just like being at on stage, there's 6 of us also taking care of stuff off stage. So
yeah,
it takes a village to really run this thing, and I would love to sit up here all day and say that it's just all me doing this, but in reality, I've got 2 great guys that really help support what I'm trying to do for these guys, and day in and day out, I couldn't build that stage or tear down that stage without my crew, and I can't sit there and run monitors and sling merch or take care of all the stuff that Jackson does, and by myself. So it really does take a whole crew to make this thing operate. Yeah. I'm very blessed to be a part of this.
It takes a village, man. Like you said, it's crazy the amount of, which one I know we're going to dig super far into this, but it's just, again, it's just crazy the amount of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, because I don't know the first thing about most of it. Like, I just don't even, and people speak foreign to me all the time about stuff or backstage at a festival, we'll see people talking about stuff, and I'm like, I'm staying away from that conversation, because
well, I think you can really boil it down to a couple things. When it comes to, there's 2 thoughts I have when it comes to monitors. One, if you're a performer, you want to be comfortable on that stage, so that's whatever it takes. Whatever instrument, if you need all the instruments all blaring at you all the time to be comfortable, then that's the gig. That's what you got to do. But there's another part of this where I think a lot of less is more is kind of the key to this. So you have they call it a temporal reference and then a melodic reference, and then that's really all you need. So like, temporal is obviously your time signature. So like your metronome, your click, a kick drum, a hi-hat, a snare, these things that are always going to be locked in with everybody else, you kind of need to have. And then if you're like a guitar player, vocalist, or, anybody up on that stage, you'll need some type of melodic reference. So that's keys, acoustic, rhythm guitar, sometimes lead guitar, but I find that a lot of lead players do things that aren't necessarily a standard melodic reference. They're not doing these big chords. They're doing kind of more, more
filling in the
linear
gaps.
Passages. Exactly. Yeah. Right. So you're not, if you're the lead singer, you're not going to necessarily want the lead guitar player all the time in your mix, because it's he may not be doing something that's actually fitting the key that you're supposed to be singing in right at that time. That's how I look at it. Now, again, I'm not like I said earlier, I wasn't too focused on the actual music side of things. I was more focused on the production side.
Right.
So some of that may sound like, well, Cory, he's got to be playing in key because that's what the lead singer does, or the lead guitar player does. But that's just how I view it, is like the less you can have, especially when you're on in-ears, because you're already so, you're already closed off with how they fit in your ears. The less crowded you want that to be, in my opinion. So you take things like if you're the bass player, I just really need a like a click, maybe some kick, maybe some snare, and then like the rhythm guitar player. I don't need acoustic all the time. I don't need,
right. Those pocket instruments.
Exactly. Just to maintain what I need to hear on stage. And that's how I view it. Now, does every artist want that? No. Some artists, they want the whole band. They want to feel like they don't have any ears in. They want to have two screaming guitars up there, the bass behind them, the drums, the keys, everything, even the ambient mics just right there in their face, because that's what they're used to. That's what they want to know, or what they want to hear. That's what they know. And, it comes down to like, it really does come down to comfort on stage, because if your artist isn't comfortable as a monitor tech, then I guarantee you as a monitor guy, you're not going to have a good time after that show.
You might not have a job after this.
You may not have a job after that show. That's a very good point. Yeah. Yeah.
So you said something earlier. I'm kind of writing down notes right as you're talking. So you said that you used to play metal back before you did all this. So
yeah, I
saw something on Twitter the other day, and I thought it was the funniest thing. I screenshotted it. I don't know who said it, but they said something along the lines of the emo rock or metal scene to pipeline to Texas country music is like a real thing. And when you think about it, all the guys that I know that play in like the Texas scene, they were all big, I don't know, Slipknot or Taking Back Sunday or Day to Remember fans. And now, if you listen to like their music nowadays, it's like, I see where they got that influence, So I was just kind of curious on what kind of metal you played back in the day.
So I was in a band called Prague, Prague, like the capital of the Czech Republic or whatever. With Jared. So Jared and I've known that kid since he was like 13 years old. So he played drums and I played bass, and we were like a tech metal band. Like this was right when kind of the gent stuff, the real progressive stuff was coming out,
guys. Gent
with a J. Like, Peripheries, Jetpacks was coming out when we started this band.
Okay. Yeah.
Like that whole mess. So we wanted to kind of emulate that, like the Born of Osiris, Periphery kind of vibe. And
man, nobody knows what we're talking about. A lot of people have no idea what we're talking about.
No, I know. I can't imagine a lot of people.
Nerd math rock for anybody that, like, if you can't count it, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, you wouldn't be able to stay on time. Is that a good way to explain it?
There was a lot of weird 5, 4, 7, 8.
Yeah.
I think we even had like a 13 count bar in there somewhere.
Yeah.
We had a lot of weird stuff, and our buddy Henry Martin at the time was writing a lot of stuff on like I think they called it like Tux guitar. It was basically like a MIDI guitar program where you could just input notes and it would make it sound, like guitar. So he was writing stuff that you couldn't necessarily play right off the top of your head, but it sounded cool. So it was a lot of weird stuff that we would just like have to learn just the way it is. And it wasn't something you could just like bob your head to. It was like, oh, you've really got to think about what you're playing.
You got to bob your head and count at the same time.
Yeah. It was very strange.
Yeah. My gateway band, I think, for that whole thing, which, I'm not near as nerdy, sadly or thankfully, depends on how you look at it, when it comes to all that math rock stuff. But man, I got really into Tesseract for a while. I don't know if you like.
Oh, yeah,
like
man.
Tesseract. And I freaking love Tesseract and
Yeah, dude.
and animals as leaders and all that kind of stuff. You know, for
Yeah.
the longest time, I was like, man, this stuff just really rocks. So now I was just curious because I saw that tweet the other day, and again, shout out to whoever tweeted that. But yeah, they said the emo rock and metal scene pipeline to the Texas country scene is like a real thing. I feel like everybody that, well, not everybody, most people I know we'll call it the Texas country scene, people that are in this scene were all rock kids that grew up and decided they wanted to actually try to make money. So they came into this, this scene that we're in, you know?
I absolutely agree with that. You know, we found our guitar tech, Jesse, from Wetzel's guitar tech, Rob. Shout out to Rob Garza. You know, Rob and Jesse had played in a metal band called Shattered Sun out in Corpus.
Okay.
So they were signed to Victory Records or something. They were huge, I guess, in the scene. I never listened to them. I didn't know of their existence when I was in Indiana, but they have music videos upon music videos with thousands of views, and you know, Rob is now
which
verified.
Is a lot for metal.
Yeah, it's a ton. Yeah. And they were, you know, they had I think the lead singer now is the lead singer for El Nino, which is pretty wild to think about. But, you know, Jesse played guitar in Shattered Sun and Rob played drums, and Jesse is really freaking good at guitar. He just, when it comes to metal, there's just no money in that. And I think,
right,
you know, you kind of turn up.
Crazy. The metal scene, I feel like, really depends on merch sales to survive, strictly
really?
Merch sales. Yeah. And because the touring metal scene, there's just not that money there is in the country scene or the
right. Yeah,
Texas rock scene or whatever, you know. And I really do think it comes down to people being in the mosh pit instead of drinking beer, you know. And
yeah,
at the end of the day, that's, you know, what it comes down to.
I wanted to take a quick second to plug our Patreon. So I've had a few people over the last few months kind of reach out and ask how they can support this podcast, and because, you know, they've been listening to all the episodes and they've gained a ton of knowledge on all the guests we've had on this podcast and just the things we've been talking about, and they want the podcast to keep going. Well, first of all, guys, this podcast isn't going to go anywhere. We're going to keep doing it no matter what. We just love doing it, and we love having conversations with each other and with other guests that we're having. We gain a ton of knowledge ourselves as it is. But if you feel like supporting the podcast, which we would highly, highly appreciate, you don't have to, but if you feel so inclined, there is a link down below for our Patreon. All of the finances from things like this podcast and the Patreon and streaming and all that stuff kind of get dumped into the same bucket, so it all goes to the same place. So by supporting on Patreon, you are by default supporting this podcast. So if you guys feel so inclined, check out the link below. And on that note, I'm sure you guys have noticed over the last 4 or 5 episodes, we've started to have some sponsors on the podcast. That's super cool because this podcast has been growing at a very, very fast rate, which we're extremely stoked about. But if you guys are interested in being a sponsor on this podcast, feel free to reach out to me or Lisa if you guys know us personally, or check out our emails down below in the description. You guys can contact us there. And without any further ado, let's get back into it, guys.
All right, so I got some other questions I kind of wrote in here for you. So whenever you're talking about playing with William Beckman and then, you know, going to Pecos, do you prefer listening to and working with a 3-piece band versus a 5-piece band? Do you like the simplicity, like the trio, or do you like having the task?
That's kind of a difficult question to answer because each artist is different. You know, some artists, you know, they need things that other artists don't. And I like working what I call combat audio, where every night is different and you've got to fix problems that occur. I want that because I would get very bored coming in, setting up stuff and, you know, drinking a beer.
And it's oh wow, the presets from last night just worked. I'm good.
Just worked. I would be in theory, that's what everybody wants, right? They just want it to sound good night after night, whatever. I like having that struggle. That makes me a more competent engineer. to go, oh, there's a fire that I need to put out. How quickly can I put out that fire?
That's cool. That's cool. So do you think that until the end of the night, or until the very last chorus of the last song, are you trying to make the mix better? Or are you, is there some
every
point?
Single time, every single song, I am in it to win it until Pecos walks off that stage.
That's great, man. That's cool.
That is, and that's the goal for any monitor tech. So the number one rule for monitors is you watch the band like a hawk. Like they can't perform at that professional level without you doing your job. So if you're off gallivanting around with off stage doing God knows what, drinking beers, doing shots with the crowd or whatever, like they need you to mix them. Like if like, God forbid, Brandon's guitar doesn't sound right in his ears, like they can't fix that. They can't just walk over to the board while they're playing mid set and fix that. Like that's what they pay you for. So, being there and being attentive and fighting those fires and making that mix sound as best as you can every night is what I strive for every single day. It doesn't matter if I'm having a terrible day or, low or the best day ever. We did a throw and go 2 weeks ago at Tortuga Fest in Fort Lauderdale, and it was just like 5 minutes to line check and get everything up on stage. And you're like, man, how am I supposed to do it? It doesn't matter.
Right.
It doesn't matter. Right. You've got to get this done. Like that's the job.
Yeah.
You've got 5 minutes to get that stage set,
I heard somebody say once that you should think of you should be practicing for the throw and go when you are setting up your stage, whenever you have, like, say, doors are at 7, shows at 8, openers at 8, but you guys get there at 2 or noon or whatever. You should be practicing for the throw and go, because the throw and go, okay, explain what a throw and go is for anybody that's never heard that term.
So a throw and go,
define it as?
For me, is you have your set time is 2 p.m. and you roll up at 1:45. That's a throw and go. Anytime you have less than what you would normally have for, say, like a headlining show, like I think we advance, load in and sound check for 3 hours. So noon to 3 or whatever. That a throw and go to me is anything less than 3 hours. Like if I have 2 hours and 20 minutes or 1 hour and 40 minutes or whatever, that's a throw and go, because then I've literally got to use all my time as efficiently as possible. It's no longer just, okay, we'll set up the drums and then maybe go, get a Red Bull or something and then, set up guitars. It's like, no, you've got to set up drums, then guitars, then, all this, that, and the other, and get it all in place, because
right.
The guys are going to come on and sound check in 20 minutes.
I feel like what a lot of bands do at venues, and every once in a while, I'm guilty of this. I think everybody in our band is probably guilty of this at some point, but we definitely used to do a lot more in the past. Was when we got to a venue, it'd be like, okay, cool, we're here on time. Let's load everything in. Let's go grab a beer. Let's just not be in a hurry, because it feels good to not be in a hurry. At the end of the day, it feels nice to just not be in a rush. But time flies so, I don't know, dude, that load in to the end of sound check time, I swear to God, flies 5 times faster than the time that we've been on this podcast, man. It's just like, and instead of using that time to just get your stuff done and then having more relaxation time, like afterwards, just like fucking off and going to get a beer, or just like, you've been to the venue before, so you want to go say hey to the promoter, the sound guy, the whatever. You want to sit back there and bullshit. I feel like it's maybe a good piece of advice for people is just to get it done and relax afterwards. Doesn't matter, because that free time goes by quick. And when you start setting up and shit goes wrong, you use your free time already to fuck off. I don't know.
When I was with Beckman, we opened up for a lot of, Beckman and Randy Rogers were like, big brother, little brother. Like it was, I think at one point Randy was Beck's manager or something.
Like standing manager for a while too, I think.
Right. Yeah. So we did a lot of shows with Randy Rogers and their crew and their monitor engineer. I'll never forget it. I think we were in Concan doing a show with them. And, we figuratively threw all of our stuff off stage, so they could do changeover. And we just kind of left it until the end of the night. Like they had already done their set, so they were starting to tear down the stage and, starting to load out their trailer. And we hadn't even loaded our trailer. And their monitor engineer, McCoy, I'll never forget, he goes, "You boys need to learn to load out first and drink later." And that, to me, sticks in my head because, well, that makes sense. My job isn't, especially now as a production manager, is like my job's not done until that trailer is locked, until that ramp is up and it's locked. Like I don't get to have a beer. I don't get to sit down and, have after show food or snacks or hang out with my buddies. I don't get to do any of that until that trailer is loaded and locked and ready to go on to the next show. So that's good. That huge takeaway from me from McCoy was always just learn to load out first, drink later. And that's just how I work now.
It's good. I feel like, because if you, kind of drink and again, I'm super guilty of that. Oh my gosh, dude. Like I'm really bad at it. And what happens for me personally is we'll start drinking and, as the opening act, because right now we're kind of in that opening band stage and we're doing a lot of that. And our stuff's like in the, the backstage corner area. It's like, man, we can load out later or we can just like go get a beer. And it's like, we'll go get a beer and we'll load out later. A lot of times I'm guilty of doing that. And what'll happen is we'll start drinking a little bit and I will get kind of buzzed, and one of two things will happen. One, it will be a buzzkill because it's like, man, now we gotta load out. Or there's been times where it's like, man, I drank too much and I'm not handling this equipment responsibly. So, it's a good piece of advice, man.
As a crew member, it's not in a lot of younger bands' cases, like it's their gear. They get drunk, they get sloppy. No harm. I mean, they're going to wake up to like, whatever, a broken case or scratched up case, a dented case or whatever. But it's not my gear. Like these guys pay me to make sure that their gear is safe and sound every single night.
Yeah, so, I would be extra pissed if somebody was handling my gear and it wasn't me that broke it.
Exactly.
I'd be like, what the hell, Cory? You broke my shit.
Exactly. So it's just that other, other like line of responsibility to where it's like you can't get drunk. Like I think and truth be told, I want to be honest about it. I have, I've done my job slightly tipsy. I may have had too many pre-show shots, but never enough to where I felt unsafe handling gear. And it was always right before I needed to go to, my monitor desk and actually mix the show. But it's never been, too sloppy to where I can't do my job. Because if I couldn't do my job, then I couldn't be here talking about how I work for Pecos and the Rooftops. It'd be a different story for sure.
I got dogs outside. I don't know if you can hear this or not, but they're probably going at it with the neighbor's dog through the fence. Anyway, okay, so more notes I've been kind of writing down. And this is just a funny side note, just because I've heard it pronounced 80 different ways. Pronounce the name of your band one official time on this podcast so that everybody knows, so they don't go back and read it wrong or anything. So do that for me real quick.
So the band I work for is Pecos and the Rooftops.
Like Paycuss. There you go. Pecos. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We even have it. So in our writer, we have MC notes. So anytime anybody announces us, it has that same spelling.
Oh, that's funny. Nice.
And then we recently just got crew shirts that have Pecos on the chest too. So
like, spelled like that.
Yeah, spelled PAY-CUSS. Yep.
Yeah.
And I've heard a lot of it. I mean, even at that Tortuga Fest, I heard pesos.
Right.
Are you with pesos? And I was like,
Pecos,
man.
which Pecos is a little bit more understandable, I feel like, because there's a, depending on how Texan you are, there's a Pecos, Texas,
Yeah.
technically,
Yeah.
but some people even pronounce that Pecos, and so, yeah, I was just,
And I'm just not from here. And, he introduced me, he introduced himself as Pecos, and that's just who he is.
right.
Pecos.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Pecos.
So what is and this is going to sound like a funny question, but I'm like genuinely trying to not be too funny. Well, maybe a little bit, but what is the proper thing to say when you are checking a microphone? And I know obviously check is good because you're checking it, but like there's certain syllables and certain frequencies and stuff that you're really trying to check. So like what is the best thing that people can say whenever they're trying to check a microphone?
So you want to do, first of all, you want to make sure that the line is working. So wherever source it's supposed to be going to, it's going to that source. So whether that's a wedge on a stage, an in-ear monitor, or say a front of house speaker, like you want to make sure that source is getting the signal, right? There's a lot of things that happen with signal flow. These things can go from, like our setup is we have Pecos on a wireless mic, and then it goes to our stage box, and then that gets split digitally between our monitor board and our front of house board. So, if the routing isn't correct, or we have a Cat 5 cable that's unplugged, one of us may not get the signal that we need to get. So one is to double check that you're getting things to where they need to go.
Make sure shit's plugged in before you try to second microphone.
That's the number one rule. Yeah. But then you also want to talk about you want to talk about plosives and basically S's. Those are the two big things. So plosives being your P's, pop, 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 pop. How much of that are you getting? So I don't really check for plosives anymore now that we've kind of dialed in Pecos' mic. But S's are a big thing. So this and these have T's is always go to that, because it kind of gives you the S's on the end, and you want to make sure that your de-esser or your gate isn't cutting that off too much, because then it'll sound choppy and you don't want that. So plosives and S's. That's your big. Okay. Those are your big two for sure.
What is that word you said? Plosives.
Yeah, plosives. They're words like pizza or place.
Okay.
Where you have that hard P sound, and it just the way your mouth makes that sound, you push a lot of air out forcibly. So what happens is it gets past I don't know if this might change, but key.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for anybody that can't see, well, nobody can really see it, but he took off his, we call it a shock block. I don't know what you call it, but
I would call this a windscreen, but
windscreen.
But yeah, so you have these plosives that if you don't have something to correct that, most of the time you can adjust that with EQ. I think it's like 200 hertz or something like that is kind of your big plosive area.
So would you recommend people saying the word plosives in your microphone?
No, I mean,
would that be
plosives is boring. Like if you're up on it, especially if you have like a crowd and you're line checking, like we line check Pecos' mic to make sure that his wedges work and that we're getting his mic in our ears. And I'll bring that stand out and I'll, this and these have T's, and I'll just rattle that off because there's a giant crowd just staring at me.
This and these have P's. I'm gonna start saying that. That's a good one.
Yeah, these just it's just you have a lot of people staring at you, and to make it a little less awkward, you rattle off something fun. Yeah, at least funny. That's how I do it in my mind.
Yeah, that's funny. Somebody used to say, we used to travel with a guy that always said, what did he say? He said like sibilance or something.
Yeah, sibilance.
Is that a thing? Yeah, because I was like, what is he saying? And then
sibilance is is the same as plosives. It's for the S's.
That's funny.
So you have plosives and sibilance is the I guess the technical terms for your P sounds and your S sounds.
Yeah. So for anybody listening, F, P, T, and S. Those are the things that people kind of look for, and then your Yeah, cool.
Yep, I'm good.
It's funny. I was actually writing down this and these have P's, so I didn't forget it. That's funny as hell, dude. I'm gonna start using that for sound checks.
Yeah, man.
I'm always just like, hey, 1, 2, 1, 2, and just start reading some shit like Corona, Shinerbach, or whatever. And I mean,
anything like that can be used, but you really want to focus on your S's and your P's, because if you don't ring out that P sound, especially when you get like really energized into a set and you hammer that P sound, like it's gonna pop and it's not gonna sound good. And that's, as audio guys, that's what you need to sound. You need the vocals sound good.
Yeah. Well, okay. So this is another question that I kind of had wrote down. Do you guys have a crowd overhead, which I don't even know if that's the correct term for that? And explain what that is for people listening to.
So you can call it, I've heard it two different ways. So I've heard it as a crowd mic or an ambient mic. A crowd mic would be more upstage near the center stage vocal. Like Randy Rogers has 2 small diaphragm condensers that sit right at his feet, and that they're just pointed right at the crowd. You can see them all over the place. Coed and Cambria in 2022, 2021, they had them on their background vocal mics. So they're up higher. So they're not necessarily, you're not going to pick up that drunk guy at the very front of the stage. You're going to kind of pick up the whole audience kind of directly in front of the mics. What I do for PRT is we have these. So our guitar players all play on Kempers, but
they all play on
Zach
what?
Kempers.
Okay.
They play on Kemper modelers. So they play. So Zach Foster, our lead guitar player, and Brandon Jones, our rhythm guitar player, they have these. I think they're called like toaster box style heads. And then what I did was I had these cases built for those, and then they have Friedman FRFR, which are these full range flat response cabs. So if they have, this is kind of a weird segue, but if they have if they're using like cab modeling on their Kempers, these cabinets that push real air aren't going to color that tone. So that kind of gives them exactly what they're hearing in their head straight to their feet. So they have these cabs that sit kind of mid stage right behind them. And what I did was I took these LP clamps and I attached them to their cabinet, their live-in road cases. And they sit just in front of the drums, so they're not getting a bunch of drum noise, especially on Brandon's side where Garrett, our drummer, sits behind Brandon on a riser. They're not going to get a ton of drum noise because they're in front of the drums, but they're also going to kind of pick up, the full stage and the crowd. So they're more of an ambient mic. I would say crowd mics go really upstage, up by the lead vocalist, kind of center stage vocalist. And then ambient mics are more back to kind of get the ambience of the stage. And those are they do 2 things. Ambient mics kind of open up your in-ears. So if you have like really well sealed off ears, like custom molds, you're going to find that you lose a lot of connection with the stage because you're just so sealed off to the outside world.
Man, when we used to use ears like a year ago, being a bass player, if I had that kick perfectly in my ear, it's almost like you're on drugs, dude. You're just like you're not involved with your surroundings at all. You're in your own world for 45, 90 minutes or whatever.
Yep.
And it's crazy, like how lost you can get. And so, if for anybody listening, if you ever see anybody on stage and they have one of their ears out, it's so they can stay with the rest of society. I feel like that's the reason why.
And that's kind of what ambient mics are supposed to do. Is if you mix them right, they give you that sense of normalcy to where you don't feel like you have in-ears in.
Yeah. Well, I was the
they're
guy that you
supposed to.
explained. I was the guy that you explained at the beginning of it where you're like, you just want all of it and you want it loud, just like give me the bass and give me the kick and the snare and a little bit of guitar. As like loud, almost as loud as I can get, get it without damaging some shit. So yeah, I'm that guy. So I had to just start taking one ear out just so I can be interactive, because I'll just get lost, man. You just get lost in that pocket and you're gone.
You get lost. Yeah. I've been there before. I think that's what helps me a lot with mixing is I've been on the side of the stage. So I feel like I kind of know what each instrument kind of wants,
Right.
Like, does the drummer need to have the keys all up in their mix all the time? Probably not. He's probably going to want all of his drums and more bass than anything.
More bass and vocals, yeah.
Right, sure. He's probably going to want it there to make it feel right, but is he really going to need keys to base off of his performance with? Right. Probably not.
And that's cool that you've had a background on this because, I find that the best booking agents and the best production folks and the best people that work behind the scenes, the best ones are the people that have been on the road as a road dog, and they've been on stage and they put in their hours, their 10,000 hours, on the road doing all this stuff so that if you're a booking agent, and you're booking this specific show, hey, the band's probably not going to be happy about this show, or they are, and then you as a monitor guy, it's like, if I'm playing drums or playing guitar or bass, like realistically, what do I need? So, okay. So here's a question that I always was kind of like genuinely curious about. And I don't know how much experience you have with front of house, but is it harder to mix front of house or is it harder to mix for monitors? Because I've heard people say that front of house is super hard because, it's more pressure. It's what the crowd hears, and depending on the size of the crowd, it can be different gauges of pressure. But with the monitors, it's like, especially if the band is a really good band, then it's super hard because you have like 5 different, producers on stage and you have everybody super picky about stuff. So which one would you say is harder or easier and why?
Truth be told, I have never done front of house on a professional scale before.
Really?
So
really? Okay.
I'm not privy to the difficulties of running front of house. I'm sure there are numerous difficulties running front of house, feedback and system placement and how the system is tuned and a plethora of things that would make your life hard. However, the fans aren't necessarily going to tell you every night that the mix was bad or that it was good. Your lead singer will definitely tell you that your mix was bad or that it was good every night. Or that, hey, I was listening and my this sounded muddy, or I couldn't hear this, or the drums were too loud, or whatever. Like, I've always viewed monitors as the hot seat in the production world because you are mixing the dude that signs your paycheck. Like, yes, front of house.
Now, when you put it like that, it sounds pretty hard.
Yes, you if you're a front of house engineer, yes, you have to be good. You have to care. Put in the work to make it sound as best as possible for the room you're in, the system you're on. There are limitations for everything. Yes, it can't. There's no such thing as a perfect mix. There's always going to be issues. There's always going to be mishaps. You're gonna miss a solo. You may not turn off a delay in time. I get it. Things happen. No one's perfect. But the fans aren't signing your paychecks away, and that's why I think that. Well, now that I'm thinking about it, now that you start getting into it, well, it's like, well, the fans are paying to hear this band.
Oh yeah, if
they think that the band sounds like crap, they're not going to show up, and then you wouldn't have a paycheck to begin with. So I think they both have, difficulties on either side, but I think more directly, it's a harder job being a monitor tech. And I would say that in smaller bands, especially once you get to the point to where you hire a person to do monitors, you're not just running monitors. You're probably also doing guitar tech. You're also doing stage management. You're doing backline stuff. So it's not necessarily just you get to sit there and run monitors all night. Like even though I do have a guitar tech who also does backline, Jesse's killer at what he does.
Yeah. Okay. So before we get into that, okay, because that was a whole nother rabbit hole I kind of want to go down. I want to circle back to something you said, and something where you said that, the fans are technically the ones who kind of pay the bills. Elisa, which is our co-host that we have on here all the time, she says this almost every episode, and she always says, the fans are technically the ones that pay the bills. It's crazy, when you go to the Cotillion, you're wearing a Cotillion hoodie right now. When you go there,
I am.
And the round mound of sound, when you go there and there's 1,500 people or whatever that pay to get in, it's crazy how many pockets. Dozens of pockets in when you're talking about talent buyers and people that work for the venue, the people that clean up the bathrooms, the agent, all the people that are involved, all 12 people that get out of the bus. There's dozens of people that, when you take all the alcohol sales for the night, $20,000 or whatever, and then all the ticket sales for the night, another $20,000 out of that 40,000. And this is just a rough estimate, out of that $40,000, the amount of pockets that gets divvied up into when it all is said and done is actually kind of crazy. And so I think that any musicians listening to this, the fans pay the bills. At the end of the day, the fans pay the bills, so
100%.
Yeah, you said that, and I just wanted to kind of like preface that because Elisa's not here, and if she was here, she'd touch up on that. So guitar tech, explain your best definition of what a guitar tech is, because some bands don't have them. I think that the bigger the band, obviously you have to start traveling with a guitar tech or whatever. I would say that people probably end up hiring on a tour manager or a merch guy, maybe a full-time front of house, maybe, but before they do a guitar tech, I don't know, maybe that's wrong, but guitar tech kind of seems like something that is a very tedious job. So explain what that is for folks that might not know what that is on the road.
Well, to start, I think young bands who, they're playing shows, they're making, decent money, they're starting to bring in more than what they need to pay the band with. They're going to hire on people, tour manager, merch person. Those are your first people. The people that
core people. Not that the guitar tech isn't core. I'm just saying that's like the building blocks, I feel like. So
well, at that level, at that stage in your career, you need someone to help you run the day-to-day stuff. Like if you're,
your biggest issue isn't whether or not your next song is in drop D or
right.
So yeah,
they need someone to make sure that the merch gets sold, that everything's settled at the end of the night. But I was very fortunate to kind of come into PRT on this massive upswing that they're doing right now. Actually, shout out PRT. They just hit 2 million monthly listeners on Spotify or something.
Yeah, and I saw they just got signed to Warner, right? Is that?
Yeah. So we went to LA. We did a California run in January, and Pecos and the guys they signed to Warner Records.
Very cool. That's awesome.
Yeah,
man. That's huge. Yeah. For anybody that doesn't know what that is, it's Warner's one of the big three. As far as like the labels go, you got Warner, you got Sony, and Capitol. Are those the big three?
I think it's Sony and Capitol.
Yeah. And so it's so that's joining the machine, coming from, and I mean that in a good way, coming from independent roots in Texas is like super cool to see, man.
100%. It's very cool. Dope to see. So shout out PRT, shout out Pecos and the Rooftops for those guys are absolutely killing it. But like I was saying, I came in on this massive upswing. Like these guys have been grinding out touring for a long time, and They just got their front of house guy, Ryan, and, Jackson, our tour manager, was doing monitors to the best of his ability, but he just trying to do everything all at once. It just wasn't cutting it. So they brought me in, and I did truth be told, I was pretty ass at my job for the first couple months. I was not very good because I didn't really know the guys. I didn't know exactly what they needed to be comfortable up on stage. So, I worked really hard, figured out, what they needed, and was very fortunate that when they wanted to add an additional member, they just added Hunter Castle to kind of be an auxiliary player. So he plays auxiliary guitar, keys, and he does a lot of background vocal stuff. So that's 5 people with guitars on stage and a drum set, and I just couldn't manage that by myself. So when they brought him in, I was very fortunate to get the green light from Pecos to bring in a guitar tech, and Jesse does a lot for me. So he does all the guitars, so he makes sure they're in tune. They get the strings changed when they need to get changed. He doesn't necessarily do them every day, but he does it like every other day to make sure they're always fresh strings. He's making sure their pedal boards are set up how each guy wants them. He's running all of our looms. So he's kind of in between a guitar tech and a backline tech. So he helps set up the amps. He helps, he lays the rugs down and tapes them off and then puts the pedal boards on, runs the looms. So he's very vital to making sure that stage gets set up in an efficient manner. So Jesse does a lot to help me out. So he, if I need something like the guys need a beer on stage, he's going to go run to the bus and go get a beer or something. Or, if something happens like, oh, my whatever kick pedal came undone, he's going to jump up. He's going to be the first guy to jump up there and kind of get that thing moving again, so we can have a proper set. So Jesse does a lot to make sure. Is he in charge of
dressing the stage from set lists to picks, all that kind of stuff?
No, that's kind of a job between the both of us. We even have Jackson come out and help us.
Jackson's the TM.
The TM, right?
Okay,
so
cool.
He comes out and helps, lay down set lists, and he does like stage towels and water and stuff, things that aren't necessarily production. They're more of like quality of life on stage, right. But he takes care of all that because
they need to change that the name of tour manager to director of quality of life on stage on the road.
For what Jackson
quality
does,
of life manager.
Absolutely, he does a lot for PRT. He is always working. He's the first one up, generally the last one to go to bed. Just always,
right.
Always making sure things are running smoothly.
What's crazy is you going on the tour manager tangent for a second. We've had a few on the podcast, and for one, it's always really cool to see how, under an umbrella, tour manager is the same thing. Is this on paper the same thing for every band, but it's cool to see how everybody does it different, and it's one of those things where if you're not good at it, you're not going to stay in that position for very long, because like you have to be on time, you have to be professional. You got to be sympathetic, I think, to a point. You got to have like some sort of grace to you, and you kind of have to know about everything, man. You have to know a little bit about production. You got to know about food on the menu. You know what I mean? You have to know about
100%.
Everything, man. It's crazy.
To be organized. You can't be sloppy at your job, because you've got, like in our case, you got 12, 11 people to take care of. Well, 12, because we also have a bus driver, Jackson makes sure that bus driver gets to the hotel after he's done driving, make sure that he gets from the hotel back to the bus to drive again. Yeah. So you can't be a sloppy drunk and be a tour manager, because especially at our level, like there's a whole tour that literally requires you to not do that, because
there's a lot of people that would love that job.
100%. And Jackson every night makes sure that, we're all taken care of, and shout out.
Seems like a great guy.
Shout out Jackson, man.
Yeah.
Love that dude. He's great.
Cool. Yeah, I honestly, what's funny is I never hear anybody complain about their tour manager because it doesn't take long for to find a new one if you're not doing your job right, And it's just kind of like if you can't be a tour manager and not be good at your job, or else you won't have a job, or else you're just So anyway,
I would also wager that that's the same for any crew member in any band.
Fair.
If you are not good at your job, you're probably not going to have that job for very long.
Right. And the stakes are higher for the greater caliber of a band you are. I don't know if that's the right term. You know what I mean? So, because it's kind of like, who wouldn't want to play guitar for,
I think there's a great video. I think it's Michael Jackson. He's up on stage. They're in the middle of a performance, and his music director misses a cue of some kind, doesn't go into this transition.
Oh, he fires ass.
And Michael Jackson is up on stage singing the melody, but is just saying, "Oh, so and so, what are you gonna do? You're out of a job." He fires him mid-set up on stage, and that's Michael Jackson. That is
right.
That is the caliber. You don't get much bigger than that, So yeah, I mean, and that's even with PRT. It's about making sure that their production is as best as it can be night after night, just so these guys can. Because they deserve to have that. These guys deserve to go up on stage, to know that their guitars are in tune, to know that everything's working. They deserve that. They've got a platinum song. I think it's about to be double platinum here soon.
Crazy.
They just got this big Warner deal. They're doing all these things, and it's you need to be at your absolute best because they're going to go find people that will actually do that if you can't. That's just what it is. That's the deal.
Right. And it's what's crazy is you were saying the thing about Michael Jackson, but I watch I don't know if you've ever seen the show Nashville. Which
I've heard of it.
It's a fun show. It's kind of I tell everybody all the time, it's like Grey's Anatomy with musicians. It's Grey's Anatomy with it's just a big drama soap opera thing, but it's got production people and managers and backup singers and, songwriters and all this other stuff. But anyway, there's just one episode where there's this girl in there and I forget what her name was. I think Christina Aguilera plays the character, but, they were in a pre-show production meeting or something with the whole entire team. And she said, "Hey, Bobby," or whatever that guy's name was. She goes, "How long you been working for me?" He's like, "Oh, 3 weeks." And she goes, "And you still can't nail that key change. Appreciate your time, but we're going to get you a flight home." And everybody else was like, "Oh, fuck, what the fuck?" I know that sounds crazy, but just the
sometimes
caliber.
Sometimes that happens, but you've also got to realize that especially on those big caliber shows, Michael Jackson probably spent millions of dollars on that production.
Right.
He's probably, he probably spent millions of dollars just to have that band there. If you're playing for Michael Jackson, you're obviously the time is worth more. So he's probably paying huge sums of money. And if you can't do that, then why would I pay you?
Yeah.
If you can't nail, just like in this Nashville,
it's kind of like with
that key change,
like free throws in the NBA. Why are these guys getting paid millions and millions of dollars to miss a shot where nobody's even?
I do not know
them? What the hell's going on there. No, I'm just kidding. Okay.
No, but the concept is the same, and I think, and just like the NBA, this is such a lucrative and exclusive business.
Both, yes.
There are a lot of bands that are putting out really good music. Do not want to shade that at all, but there are still, bands that they're selling out a lot of venues and some opinions like the whole Morgan Wallen, I guess. Some people just don't want to see that, but I would even say that right now is kind of a hard time for good audio engineers. COVID really decimated the whole marketplace for audio engineers right now, and it's hard to find them. Our front of house engineer Ryan Sneed has been going through some medical things right now. Shout out Ryan. Hope you're doing really well, buddy. But I've been trying to find fill-ins and replacements until he can get back to touring. And from 2 weeks ago until now, I had probably 3 people interested. And this isn't a small time gig. This is a bus gig.
Right.
You get your own front of house rig. I'm not going to force you on the house console. It's like this is
nice.
Big time, and I just got 3 people to even want to look at it. So
right,
it's pretty rough out here for quality engineers.
What Cory's saying is guys like me, good guys like me, it's a little none out here, guys. my quality.
Well, I don't even know if I'm quality. I'll
just give it, man.
Well, the other thing is I don't really have.
I don't think you'd be in the job that you're in if you weren't fucking kicking.
Well, I don't have a frame of reference, to be honest with you. Like, this is my first professional gig. Not that like the other bands that I work for weren't professional, but this is like,
I know what you mean. Yeah,
they're paying my bills. They're paying
right.
Like, I don't not to.
Hey man, toot your own horn. You have all the permission. Go for it. Please do.
I went from having a steady day job and gigging on the side to now I get to wake up at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday and do a podcast at 2:14 in the afternoon. And all my bills are paid. I don't have to go into another job. I don't have to do anything else. Pecos is gracious enough to literally pay me so I don't have to do anything else but focus on,
right.
the band.
And that's the thing too, is when you get in those positions, it's kind of a, behind the scenes. So, the girl I was talking about, Elisa, which I don't think you've met her, but she, you might've met her in somewhere, but, she's the tour manager for Sonny Sweeney. And for the last dozen episodes, she's been like the co-host on here. Well, she was Raglan's manager up until about, I don't know, a week or 2 ago, but she's just so busy with Sonny. And I'm sure Sonny takes like very good care of her. And the thing about it, where I'm going with this is when you get to like the level that you're at, or the level of playing with, somebody like Michael Jackson or whatever, they need you exclusively, and so they're going to take care of you financially, because there always kind of comes to that question of how much is it going to cost to have you available at all times for us, and it's there's thousands of people, in New York or Dallas, Fort Worth or LA or Austin or whatever, Nashville, like that are just trying to find work, $100 here, $100 there. I run sound at this place. I play bass in this band, whatever, but how much is it going to cost you to become a full-time member to where you can dedicate all of your time to this? And so I think if there's anybody that is in the production world or plays guitar or drums or bass or whatever, you can work your way up to a position to where it's like you're fully taken care of, and it's
100%.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I cannot tell you how much I am grateful to PRT.
You sound very grateful. You sound like you're.
Well, I mean,
very happy
truth be told, they changed my life, man. Like, I went from, grinding out. I don't have a college education. I never went to college, never did any higher learning or anything like that. I just went from high school to a warehouse trying to play as much music as I could on the days that I had off. And then literally through chance, I met Brandon, and Brandon got me, a gig in to run monitors. And that led to literally me quitting my day job and being able to do this full time. So
yeah, now you have your own team on the road. You have people that you are,
which is also just insane cool, to think about. it used to just be Ryan and I, and now, you know, it's myself, Ryan, and Jesse, and, you know, it's like now I've got people asking me questions about this production, where it used to be me asking them questions about the production now. So it boggles my mind some days that I still get to do this for a living. And
you just seem like the kind of guy that is just like a go-getter, and, you know, I'm totally kissing ass here, but, you know, behind the scenes, I mean, you wanted to be on the podcast, you know, and it was just like, hell yeah, man, like, let's do it, you know. And I think that you just kind of wanted to network and kind of talk shop and stuff for a little bit, and you just have that personality. And I don't think it's a surprise that you've worked your way up the way you have in the last, you know, say year or two or whatever, because, you know, they say that the squeaky wheel gets the grease, you know what I mean? And it's kind of, it's, you know, you're the one standing out, you know, you're the one that they're gonna, you know, shine the light on and pick, you know. So one more question, and then I'll let you go. So typically in these types of podcasts, I always like to ask people what their pet peeves are, and it's not to just sit here and we just talk shit and just bitch about our lives and stuff, but it's just so that people that listen to this podcast, they can think, like, shit, that's me, dude. I do that. I'm the one that they're talking about, so I need to quit doing it. So if there's one or two things that come to mind, whether it's, you know, other production people in the band, and we don't have to name any names, or, you know, people at venues or whatever, is there something that comes to mind when you think of a pet peeve of yours?
A pet peeve, I don't know if it's a pet peeve, but it sure is annoying. Please do not make the bus park 2 blocks away from the venue. Please do not throw me, you know, a little plywood ramp and say, get it up on stage, because it sucks. It sucks. Also, the other thing, if you're a production guy, if you're the local house production dude, and you can't tell me who to talk to about the hands, we're not going to have a good night. Like, I need to know where
you knew we were coming.
You knew we were coming,
because
if you tell me it's not my responsibility, it's the you know, it's the owner, it's the
that's a so and so question. That's you need to go ask them. It's like, man, okay, I'll go on this fucking wild goose chase for you. Since
it's like, you could I know you have their number. I know we're here right now. Just get them over here and I'll talk to them. But no, it's you got to go talk. Like, you could make this so much easier on all of us if you would just go slightly out of your way to help me do the job I need to do. I've got to do the job. You don't get to get rid of me. You don't get to go home until I get to go home, essentially. So just help both of us figure out where the hands are.
And I think that's for everybody, man. On the road, it's like, if everybody could just be like a let's figure it out attitude,
yeah,
that would just go so much farther. Whether you're production or, the guy at the venue, it's like, you know how it is. You walk in and you're like, hey, man, I'm looking for X promoter, or hey, I got a question, like, what do we do with this? Or it's like, oh, you're going to have to ask so-and-so when he gets here in 2 hours. It's like, give me his number, dude. It's like, yeah, I don't know if that's exactly what you're talking about, but that happens to us all of the fucking time. Yeah. So,
and then a few things for young bands who are opening up for PRT. If you bring in your own in-ears, if you have wireless in-ear systems, that's a Shure, Sennheiser, the weird X-Vibe things, turn those bad boys off as soon as you're done playing. Turn them off. I need that RF space. Okay. I need it. I have 18 channels of RF. You have 4. I need that RF space. Turn it off. Same thing, you know, if you're a mid-sized band and you're opening up for big acts, as soon as your guys get your ears out, turn off the RF. Like, with the FCC selling off that 600 megahertz band, like, there's a lot less space to play with on the commercial side of things. So if you're playing with RF, turn that shit off when you're done.
Do you like it when support acts are on wedges? Is that you're just like, cool, smooth?
No, I prefer having everybody on ears.
Really?
Wedges,
really? Okay.
Wedges are not fun.
Is that because you have to end up taking them off stage afterwards? It's just more shit that you got to do, or was it?
Yeah, I mean, you walk on with ears. It's a belt pack and some headphones rather than two or maybe 8, wedges, depending on, what you're doing. And then if you don't spend the time to adequately like ring those wedges out, or, the guitar player always needs more wedge, like they're just going to be screaming at you all night, and it's not going to be fun to deal with because you're going to be running around like a crackhead just trying to dip those frequencies out. They're not fun. They're not fun. And I would, if everybody could afford to have in-ears all the time, that would be great. And, companies like Behringer and Midas and QSC, they're all making these small digital mixers now to kind of help get everybody up to speed on that stuff. It's really great. And I mean, that's what I started on, was an old Behringer X Air 18, I think.
Find you a good Sweetwater representative.
Good old Sweetwater candy. But it's cool to see everybody on in-ears right now. And, wedges are annoying. Wedges are a pain in the ass to deal with. And,
yeah, well, that's funny.
Sometimes that's the gig. And you just got to suck it up and, put the wedges out. And
yeah, we use wedges because we don't want to interfere with stuff, and just, it seems like your in-ears aren't going to go out at where a show where you sold 100 tickets. The in-ears are going to go out where we're opening for a 1,000 cap room and it's sold out for somebody. That's when our in-ears always go out, dude. Never fails.
I've never had in-ears go out, but I have had wireless go out. So like instrument wireless. We were playing, it was a Co-Wetzel show in Oklahoma, I think the BOK Center. So we're talking 10,000 or so people. And it's during this damn song, which is, huge song, almost double platinum,
baby. Yeah.
And Pecos starts it, the little acoustic thing. He starts it, and literally he was on a Shure GLXD 16, the little pedal, with the tuner and everything. And it was just like real choppy. He'd hit a chord and it would just cut out like 5 times.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget it. He just told me like, I don't care how much it costs. We just need better wireless.
Yeah.
And
invest your money wisely, guys. It's worth it. Don't get the cheapest things.